I have somebody move the Executive Officer's information report be received. Peoples, seconded Councillor Gleeson. Those in favour, 7-0. Great.
Some of the highlights from the report, we've had a joint consultative committee meeting, union representatives. So the next step now for our certified agreement is to give notice of no intention to bargain. So that will happen next week. Then the certified agreement expires on the 28th of June next year. 6 months. If we don't come to an agreement before that date, the old agreement. I've got dates there for on the 1st and 2nd of December, we've got workshops. We're doing corporate risk register and cost of services on the 1st and the financial management workshop. Now, for our external audit, I've applied for an extension of time. 30th of November, that completed. That is at the request of the audit clause. We have completed their financial statements. We haven't finished doing the audit. And requested that we request an extension of time. I did that personally at the LGAQ State Conference with the Department of Local Government offices there.
So, Brett, because we aren't the reason, it's at the request of the auditors, will that affect our timeliness rating? Will we be amber or red because the audit's not completed by the set date in the audit plan?
Actually, although those ratings have changed from traffic light system, dashboard systems, that affects.
But whatever the system, there shouldn't be any adverse finding on council because the auditors can't do their job in time. We've supplied our information and they haven't audited. Well, if they didn't allocate sufficient resources to execute the audit in time as per their audit plan, their problem. If they want to go changing the individual personnel that they use to do the audit and then take time to bring the new ones up to speed, again, their problem. Yes, we've had to ask for the request of the extension of time, but councillors will remember my very forthright opinion in the audit team last year, and I haven't even seen the audit report yet, and I've already got concerns about they are asking for an extension of time. We'll wait with bated breath.
CASA completed their audit of the Barkey Airport. Waiting on that report. As well, we've had the lighting audits of Barkle and Alpha. We'll have some expenses with Alpha. We'll need a new switchboard. Waiting to see how much that's going to cost. The renewable energy zone, we continue to negotiate that, and we actually received a letter yesterday which I haven't had time to review. Yeah. Hopefully we'll have that due diligence report. So as a result of the due diligence, as part of the due diligence process, we had to go back to Sunshot series of questions. I've only provided a response yesterday. That will then feed into the due diligence to present to council. Just met with BOQ in the morning tea break. They have no issue with the relocation of the library into the BOQ building in Alpha. That's proceeding and hoping to have that later. The Go Far Out campaign, that's a rapid initiative, so that's about recruiting employees. So I've done some videos, which I can show you later. After the meeting, to have a look, I can send you the links. But what they've done is interview workers in the region, campaign to get people to move from the city, come out to the bush to work. I've signed a contract to have all our flood and rain gauges maintained before the Christmas period. So that they're all working in case we do have a major event. Principal Cycle Network, we'll talk about that a bit later, but they've also now introduced walking grants as well. So they've got cycle paths and now walking paths. Funding for both those. Lots of infrastructure. Otherwise,
Questions, councillors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Brett, Mr. Dio.
Brett's fine.
The cycle network and walking grants. TMR, do they advise us where to put those pathways and walkways, or do we choose where
we choose with them. So a few years ago, we had a meeting here with my grades. We set those principles. Well, they presented a draft and we agreed on where they. We do have the opportunity to change those. Going through the next phase, but that'll only happen in the next couple of weeks. Changing phase. They won't fund paths in Jericho or Borough. I don't know about the walking grants, but maybe this. That only came out yesterday.
Any further questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just only need the positions and maybe location of the 4 resignations and the 1 position we've recruited.
So 2 of the resignations were retirements, so retirement age. Retired. 1 had family issues away, like sick relatives, they had to care for that person. Had 1 patient. There was 2 in Alpha, 2 in Park Auburn. And the 1 position recruited. Check that one up. I can't remember who that was. Yep, I'll find out for you. Sorry.
Councillor Plum, any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I think that was Jericho, is it?
Yes, sorry, Jericho. There was Jericho one recruit.
Thank you.
Councillor Glass.
Airports, the lighting inspection, you mentioned something in Alpha, can be fixed or renewed in Alpha, nothing to do with the toilets, but it's got to be done in Alpha.
Electrical, so it's a
Only
switchboard. Yeah, it was only a lighting inspection, so
Oh.
they, electrical, sorry, it's not just lighting, it's electrical inspection.
It was only electrical inspection, so nothing to do with the building at this point in time.
No. So we need to get, so they've identified there's a problem. So I need to get an electric contractor to go in and find out what the problem is, but we believe it will result in a new switchboard. Expenses.
And that does refer to the toilet, actually, come to think about it, because the electric pump at the toilet, I don't go there very often, but that was the ordinary last time I was there, and that was because.
Chief concern about the electric switchboard's not the terminal building, it's the actual lights for the strip.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I think it controls that. Well, it's holistic, it probably controls everything, but our operating concern is to make sure the lights come on when it's supposed to.
When they ask them to. Okay.
We have in other strips in the council area moved them to solar, but we've received agreement to do that. Was it Marlborough? And both have gone solar.
And during.
They've been there on all the time. Or they come on command, like alphas. Okay, Councillor Hanson, question. No, Councillor Peoples.
No, I'm like Mr. Mayor Rogers. Thank you. Agenda item
3.2. Can I have somebody move that we receive the report containing councillor information correspondence? Councillor Gleeson moves, Councillor Peoples seconds. Those in favour? Carried. Those can all stand as received. No need to, unless anyone has a particular issue to discuss from any one of those pieces of correspondence. I just would note, councillors there, the submission into the provision of general practitioner and related primary health services. You'll note that we were one of two regional local governments, three, that provided detailed submission there. You note our submission referenced on page 36. Nothing. I don't think there's anything even remarkably controversial, slightly controversial in that. Nothing that hasn't been discussed in this room before. As recently as actually when you would have noted in my information report for the last meeting that I'd undertaken this engagement. And I did reference in that the two elements. One, to ensure that GP services are not over relied upon in the replacement of face-to-face services and the issue around paramedic service gaps in some of our council areas, which is in turn a problem.
Yeah, I understand where they're going with that, Mr. Mayor. Only in recommendation 3, it probably says that, telehealth is not to be used to completely replace emergency medicine in regional areas. I'd like them to have been a bit tougher on telehealth, that's all.
Yep. I think that point probably more deals with emergency services, not GP services, which is what this is probably aimed more at, this inquiry, is what are we going to do about GP services? I can't get them out here. We've got none, effectively. So Yeah, I'm with you. There will be times where there'll be a specialist type of care that's required, so we need to ensure that telehealth's got the robust capacity.
Great, Ed, yep.
Okay. 333, planning and development.
Excuse me.
All right, Councillor Gleeson.
Go back to 3.32, council information.
Yep.
There's a letter there from the Alpha District Tourism requesting permission to let free caravan park, especially in that area on the other side of Alpha Creek, where it's been blocked off. Where are we at there? I personally can't see anything wrong with caravans parking there, but what's the council's point of view on that?
That's, well, it was going to come up in the budget as to what we did with, because the showgrounds is another place, you know, probably a better place actually, like we do here.
We're looking into it.
Well, it's going to come up in our budget discussions in December, what we do.
Sorry for asking, but how did we respond to Ms. Anderson's letter? Somebody want to respond to that?
Council have received the correspondence and we've said right on it. Tom.
Mr Mayor, that this topic of Queensland health was a very hot topic at the conference in Mackay. Do you think that we've got doctors here? There's a lot of places that don't have doctors. Is it a few for them? They were all rallying to try and get something out there so that they could do something about it.
Yeah, I would argue we're probably not much different. We don't have any either. We don't have any private GPs either. Zero. All ours are state doctors undertaking GP services. Then there's no private general practitioners in the Buckhall and regional council area.
We have doctors, some of them don't have it. You
We
know,
don't have a doctor in Alpha. We don't have a doctor in Alpha.
that's what I'm
Or
saying.
Marlborough, Aranac or Jericho. We have someone who occasionally attends, but not, there's no, so yeah, like, you know, Flinders' case is the same, they've only got 2 towns, we've got 5, and we've only got doctors in one of them.
It's through you, Mr Mayor, with an issue on that. Does it include like people going away to see specialists? That's involved in what you're doing there?
No, it's purely about GP services. How do we make it a more attractive place for GPs to wish to practice?
Because I do know because there's one comes to Longwood, flies out every 6 months or whatever. If you've got to go to Rocky, you can't get a PTS because he comes out here, but if you book into him in 2 years, and I believe they took Townsville off now list, so if you go to see a doctor in Townsville, people can't get PTS for that either, which doesn't affect the likes of me, but the older generation that has to go away.
No, this is purely aimed at the federal government on GPs, and patient travel subsidy is a state thing, and there is a separate review LGA is participating in guidance in scope of yet that looks at disability access and seniors' access to specialist care. Not necessarily rural focused, but obviously the rural impacts will be there. So when I see that scope, I'll forward it to councillors. It's new. LGA will be putting a submission together. I only heard about it a few weeks ago. That sort of information would be very handy for that.
Mr Mayor, just a suggestion maybe. I think with locum GPs and what have you, I think health departments pay a lot of money daily rate. Maybe an idea might be that we look at not such a high daily rate, but you get a bonus if you stay for 6 months and then 12 months. You know, work it so that you get a fair bonus at the end of the term. Some way to keep them here than just on a daily rate.
So slightly different but somewhat similar is recommendation 4, where there's a special hiring allowance for those in regional areas under the Medicare rebate scheme. I mean, that's the easiest way to leverage financial incentive for doctors to stay is for is through the Medicare rebate scheme.
Yeah.
If there's a higher allowance for doctors who practice in a regional area, I know David Littleproud has supported that, and Matt Canavan even more so. Matt thinks it probably needs to be higher, but hopefully that's some of the stuff that comes out of this review, is whether it's a bonus or even just for every patient you see in these zoned areas where medical. I mean, as Councillor Plum said at the LGAQ conference, so we're talking about the failure of the medical doctor training scheme. It's put a lot of doctors through and none of them are here.
Yeah.
And so we've got to look at another incentive. There was an incentive offered there through tertiary scholarships and financial incentive. That hasn't worked. So now we've got to look at whether it's, cash incentivising somehow them to be here. And the only way that the federal government can influence that really is they don't employ them. In the case of state-based GPs here, they're to incentivise private sector GPs. Really, their only way to lots of ways they can do anything, but an already existing mechanism that they just got to leverage better is the Medicare rebate scheme, because that's their direct payment to the doctors for the patient visitation. Kind of like zonal taxation. Not really. The reverse. The one thing that is very hard to look past, is work-life balance. We live in a different world to what we did 30, 40 years ago. In every field of employment, it's not limited to doctors. But the work-life balance of a doctor and living one doctor with very limited, if any, locum support to relieve them or give them a day or a weekend off. It's why we've ended up where we have, to be fair, as much as anything. Doctors need today, their presentation is no different to anyone else. They want to be able to switch the phone off and not have someone knock on the door at 4 hours in the morning with an emergency, real or otherwise, and that's been a real challenge that was identified in several debates in Mackay. It's not the fault of doctors. It's an evolving world we live in, and I think that's identified in one of the recommendations as well. Recommendation 8, providing more guaranteed locums for any doctors who do wish to establish in a rural area, which the state do, obviously. They have that system in place for the GP services they offer, but that trick around the difference between a state system and dedicated private GP. And even the states struggle to provide enough locums, hence the cancelled services. And their salaries are not inconsequential, as you identified. Slow burning fuse. Councillor Gleeson. No, unless you're not.
No, I was going to ask it because I'm going to ask Gary,
Councillor Peoples.
Councillor Peoples, why are you leaving room for item 333, planning and development?
Rec parks in the report on economic development, rec parks mentioned there.
Yes.
I can understand at 1 and 2.
In the rec park, most of what's written down here about the rec park is the policy draft operational plan. Nothing to do with building or constructing or anything. There's
Councillor Gleeson, at the end of the day, a councillor's individual right to declare a prescribed conflict of interest is purely theirs.
I totally understand that, but that the council people would have been more beneficial in the room to be discussing these matters like the operational plan. Anyway, I just wanted to ask a question.
We have no power to compel him to stay in the room, so if he's choosing to leave, that's his choice. Fair and move on that basis, sorry.
And I've had, I've been told at previous meetings that I should leave the room on anything. Rec park. Councillor Gleeson, so I'll hear that. The only thing I would ask the CEO is that possibly could we have at the next meeting in the agenda that the town planning and the real planning points 1 and 2 there be separated from point 3.
Well, they are now if you wish to remain in the room for point 1 and 2. you declare, you're on, like, it's no different to goals 1 through 5 in the
Well,
engineering report.
I'll do that. Because it's only point 3 that's usually common.
So, Mr Mayor, getting back to that one,
Sorry, point 3, councillor Peoples, is the draft planning scheme. How have you got a conflict in that? No one does. Oh, sorry.
There's 3 things combined in 3.
Sorry, the summary document doesn't reflect the report. So you're looking at page 48 as being your PCOI, not the draft planning scheme and the individual planning services, inquiries, advice,
That's
or
correct, Mr. Chair.
DAs. Okay. Can somebody please move that we receive the planning and development report?
Before we do that, Mr Mayor, on the similar subject to
Councillor Peoples?
Councillor Gleeson.
Oh.
No, I just want to clarify. Does Councillor Hanson think he has a COI with respect to a close associate on the development application?
Can you be specific for us, please, Councillor Arthur?
The first applicant?
Oh. Through you, Mr Mayor, that I did look at that, and we don't prove anything in the application.
That's probably still something you should declare.
Yeah, I'm quite willing to declare it at the same point. So I did look at that, and I couldn't see a conflict.
A find conflict is a close family member though, and that would define him as that. So it's not necessarily a prescribed conflict, but it's still a conflict. It's how you choose to declare it now that probably matters.
We don't get to make a decision on building applications, do we? As a council?
We do. Not building applications. No, not that particular one, no.
I will take your recommendations. Like me to proceed with this one, the councillors.
I don't think there's anything in the room for public. I'd be happy with it. I think it's probably a declared.
Mr Mayor,
We're only receiving the report. Stay with me.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, I will declare that as an interest, and I will leave it up to the councillors to decide when to stay.
Just 2 seconds. Councillor, your close associate here is, so a close associate is defined as a spouse, parent, child or sibling, so obviously referring to a child. And it is deemed as a prescribed COI if the matter relates to an application or submission, and examples that are given are DAs. So even though this is a report with no decision, the matter still relates to an application, council, from a close associate. So probably need to prescribe COI and leave on that basis.
Prescribe as a COI on 3.3.3.
On the basis of a close associate. Okay. Thank you. So you'll have to leave while we discuss that one, and then you can come back in and Councillor People's going to leave when we do.
Should we leave now?
Yes, please. I still haven't had anyone move this yet, so I'll get it in a minute. Now, can I have some Councillor Plum, second to Councillor Gleeson? Those in favour? 6-0. Wait, late.
You asking, can I vote?
If you don't think so, I'll withdraw my vote, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, there's nothing really in those reports that I need to happy to leave the room for the whole lot. That's what I suggested at the start of the meeting. We can look at changing them over next meeting or I declared at the start of the meeting, Mr. Mayor, I'll just leave it to you.
End up with too many agenda items. Where we've just got a practical. Within this report, there are a number of sections that they all relate to planning and development, except possibly that development that has been previously a separate agenda item. Let's return that to a separate agenda item. But all of the rest of it deals with theoretical stuff. The rest of it deals with actuals. These are current DAs or advice that's been given. The rest is hypothetical. So I'm going to call that vote again, please. Those moved, Councillor Plum, second, Councillor Gleeson. The council received the report. Those in favour? 5-0. Right, questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've just noticed that there's no value of works against the DAs at present. I just think it's probably a metrics to see how we're going. Like if year to year our development applications are increasing, it's probably a reasonable indicator that works are being planned, that they're using the development application process, and we're still getting things renewed
So, Mr. Mayor, there are a couple there that
that trigger that requirement.
so the four.
Yep, I appreciate that.
And then some we don't get into later in the process, so they get added in. So
Okay.
I can make sure they go in. They got those figures.
It's just that sometimes when you see a table like that and there's one has a $0 figure and then the rest are blank, it's unclear as to whether it attracts zero reporting or whether it just hasn't been filled out.
Sometimes people, they put in the development application, they still haven't got the way through the builders.
So the value of 2,149,000, that is the value of work that's been advised to date, is that right? Okay. I'm with you now, councillor. So you're suggesting that, okay, we got the total there, but we're not sure.
Yeah, because underneath we've got total 2019, 20, 21.
There's a big step up
Yeah.
to 20, isn't there?
Yeah, 19 to 20.
And then hopefully,
Although I think there was something in a previous one that there was an explanation as to why that
Would-
spiked.
probably look like,
Was it solar farms, I think?
Solar farms,
Yes. Yeah.
previous one.
Yeah.
This one's got the globe and a bunch of stuff in there, but still you would think on the percentage of the year eclipses, we're probably on track to match 2020.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I think that's a good indicator that at least if we're trending upwards with the value of work that we report on that goes through the BA process, it's probably a reasonable sign that things are looking up. At least not going backwards. We better phrase it.
Okay, I note in planning services inquiry, this was a complaint from someone other than a landowner, the landowner in question here. That matter's still in play, the noise odour, industrial activity, that's still alive.
The letter has been.
Yeah, so has it been closed satisfactorily or just closed from a planning service?
Closed from a planning.
Right.
So that the planners have provided the advice.
It's not like a law issue.
Yeah. Go up to council.
Did you say, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, did you just say that if they're closed, the council is finished with them, but they've not made real planning, or they're?
No, it just means that that area of council's finished, that's been finished with in the planning team and it's now been handed over to local laws to deal with. Yeah, right. Okay, other questions? In terms of economic development, further questions? Noise plan, how did we go securing that noise study? Still searching. So that'll be the final cog in the wheel. Right. Nothing further. Please return Councillor Pickles and Anthony. Okay, 334 deals with our council meeting dates. Now, of course, these can be amended at a meeting if required, but it allows for planning for the year. All officers, ourselves, a whole host of things.
One quick question. I think it really worries me, but why did we go from Wednesday back to Tuesday?
Well, we trial it. We're in the middle of a 6-month trial, and I guess he's determined here today whether it's been successful or not, or we haven't had enough information. But part of it was to do with the interruption to the work week for our staff. So we quite often have 2 days of meetings. So we have planning workshops on the Monday or on the day before the meeting, and then the general meeting the next day. Where that's a Tuesday, Wednesday, it effectively takes 3 days out of the office's week. Monday, getting ready for Tuesday and Wednesday, where we locate the meetings early in the week, Monday, Tuesday. We then free the back end of the week up, especially on RDO weeks, where Friday, inside staff get RDOs, but in terms of getting stuff done away from here, it's problematic. I'm personally ambivalent. I mean, to be here every day of the week, but available every day of the week, but whatever. Tuesday fits well, I think, in terms of you start the week with your meeting on the Monday, general meeting on the Tuesday and then whatever is on. I wouldn't like to see them on a Monday or a Thursday. I think the only 2 days in the week realistically, because of a host of reasons, but Tuesday and Wednesday are the days probably the best fit. We are in your hands, so just Brett's just continued on because we said we tried for 6 months and the first 3 of those will be within that 6 months, and then if you want to, and you can change all 3 of them now too if that is your wish.
The problem is you get up on Wednesday and you think it's Thursday. Although you walk around, it's Thursday, it's only Wednesday.
Frees up so much more of your week for you.
An extra day.
Reading Mr. Mayor, I just asked, like, from the officer's point of view, has it worked while doing, like, Tuesday been better?
This is only the
Second one.
one we've filed, so. In terms of preparation, it doesn't make any difference for the agenda. I think it's good that then you've got 3 days after the meeting to go back to the office.
District managers, any thoughts?
Yes, no.
Black. Councillors. What are we doing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, will we still, if we have the Tuesday meeting, will we still receive our digital bundle on the late on Wednesday, the Friday previous, or will that come forward a day?
It'd be good if it could come forward would be my answer, but I just don't, can we?
No, that's all. My preference would be too, but the realisation of whether that will happen with.
Yeah, I mean, we're moving the day forward, but we're not moving the day we get the agenda forward, Eddie, and that's a concern. And it probably is the thing I would like about having it on Friday, because anything is easier to follow up on. Basically.
Or whether, Mr. Mayor, whether there's stuff in our agenda that we can be drip fed beforehand, like some of the communication is even from the previous month, like some of it in our council information, like, and then some are only a single page, some are 15 pages, some are 30 pages. Some of that, if we could receive that earlier, might just alleviate a bit of time. We have a 300-page agenda. We can see some of that a week before or 2 weeks before. It just gives us more time to concentrate on the
Decision-making reports. And was a good example of that, this agenda with the light draft. Tuesday, Monday. Right. So in terms of day of the week, notwithstanding the points that Councillor Arthur just raises around agenda provision.
You want me to move the resolution, Mr. Mayor?
Well, does anybody want to provide an alternative to what's there?
I just asked the question in the first place, but I'm happy.
Yeah, you're happy?
As long, excuse me, I'm sorry, as long as the staff are the ones who are putting it together, as long as it works better for the staff.
I just advise the Bush councils is the 26th to the 28th of July. So that still fits in. Those meeting dates.
So Councillor Gleeson moves that. Second. Councillor Arthur. Right. Those in favour?
somewhat aside to that, Mr. Mayor, when do we look like getting back to open meetings? As in public? Is there any movement with that with all the changes with COVID?
I think there's an element of it that's allowed now, but there's a meeting this afternoon that I think will find vaccinated people to go complete unrestricted, double vaccinated. So I think those provisions will change then very quickly. But social spacing won't require distancing. So I'd be happy for the meetings to return to open now, if they're allowed.
So the only restriction, Mr Mayor, is the per square metre rule. So we're allowed 20 people in this room. So there's 15 of staff mates. So we could have 4 people.
Whereas I think what we'll hear today is that we can have the number of people in here provided they've got 2 shots.
So in saying that, if we open it to the public, do we not have to go?
Don't have to, but
Oh, so
I
will we be serving it or
wouldn't
not?
envisage any change to that. And Emma Rail Trail. Can I have somebody move that we received the report? Councillor Rogers. Second. Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Carried. Comments or questions? None. 336. Sale of property 67 Elm Street. Council 67 Elm Street is the regional executive office building. It is proposed by officers that be sold at auction. Background material there. Comments, thoughts, questions?
It's going to roll through all the,
I'm not at the same.
roll through
Councillor
the
Gleeson.
Page 112, councillor Gleeson, if that helps.
Through you, Mr Mayor, what sort of data are we envisaging the auction? Like,
Early in the year.
so in that case, if it's
So
sales,
we'd have an advertising campaign. February, March.
so, and it sells, are you happy that you can rent it back at such times as you can move it out of it, or what's the,
So I'm working on a contingency plan. Open sell. I need a plan. Capital management.
reasons to look at? Is there part? We agree on the
The reserve is set, day, the auction, be on the morning.
I would remind councillors that we're in open session.
That do it at the last minute.
Councillor Plum.
how much longer does rescue have? How much longer?
Mr Mayor, can I go?
How long do rescue have in the old buildings in town?
Rental of the offices.
Mr. Mayor, I have to double check that, but I think there is also clauses written in there about giving notice.
I just wouldn't like to see you out on the street, Mr Mayor.
We won't be out on the street. I mean, there's options there, including lease back or contingencies other than that, utilisation of other offices. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hanson, Councillor Peoples seconds. Debate? Being none, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? 7-0. 337. Council commences an advocacy campaign to secure reliable electricity supply. The background material here speaks for itself. The dump, there's several locations, speaks to this as well. This does dump on several rural properties. Councillor Pickles.
Mr Mayor, can we add Aramac to that too, because we've got a in and out electric supply also. Problems with, I think there's, is Jericho got problems?
Not to the same extent that Alpha does, but there's problems. I mean, it's mostly in Jericho, just storm damage, the power goes off. And there's storm, whereas in Alpha and Hunterborough, it's just happens on a blue clear sky day, down to 95 volts for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
Jericho's on a different line to Alpha.
Storm damage that causes the problem.
We're on the same line as Hunterborough.
I don't know. It would be, I would think.
If I could add Aramac to that too, because ours option blades, whatever you, Mr Mayor, also.
So we could just take the names out of there altogether. Pure reliable electricity supply. There was feedback to me yesterday from rural residents around Barcaldine here who told me the exact same story as I got at home. So it's probably a common problem on SWER systems that are overtaxed with the power being demanded from them as opposed to the power going into them. Any opposition?
Mr Mayor, no opposition, but how's the council going to go get around it? I mean, how are you going to attack this?
We'll start at the Minister and work our way up to the Premier. We just have to put together a fair bit of information, documentation, probably some strategies to repair it. Don't go there with the problem without a solution. They might like the solution, but at least then we've given them an option. Probably have a couple of conversations with Ergon, and I'll just refer back to the fact that they don't have any money to do it, and then we'll have to go above them. We'll go and have those conversations. Sometimes it's possible that they don't even know. I mean, the bean counts within the so-called private section of Ergon, fully owned government subsidiary, government-owned corporation. They just might not be aware that some of us out here live in third world conditions. Should be.
I said to the Mayor, we've made lots of noises about electricity supply, but council has not had a campaign at all trying to improve the electricity supply as a council. We go and advocate for road funding, advocate for mobile phone, internet funding, but core thing that we all need is a reliable electricity supply to our homes and businesses. I think it's probably one thing that we're lacking.
Well, it's the one thing that all of our, we don't offer town water services to all our ratepayers. We don't offer rural roads to all our ratepayers because some of them live in town, but And we don't do PR, but something that we need to get someone else to do better. They're not doing it. Sorry, where was I at? Move on. Councillor Gleeson, Councillor Rogers, those in favour? Carried. 338, Principal Cycle Network Plan. The areas here, we have them on the map. Here, is that, or is that too far? That's right, we've got them. I'm not sure where you need to go. So,
Mr Mayor, this is the next round of the cycle. It's the third round of cycle funding coming up. Cycle path funding. As part of this funding, we have to demonstrate that conducted rotation we're eligible to apply. That's why last time we did the community forum. It's also why it's presented to council now to consult on these. So at the December meeting, we'll be looking at this again. Also, in our budget workshop, we're going to apply for pathway.
so can we see what the differences are or the extensions? Because obviously we've already approved some of this.
So in Aramac,
Is it just the Route D, the red line?
I don't think there's any change in those maps. It's what we haven't done. And the next stage of Aramac will be Booker Street to the showgrounds.
So what's listed there is CWBRCP 11.
That one. The next stage. So that goes off the Booker Street footpath to the showgrounds.
Park Alden.
That's 16. It's identified as a mark. They're responsible for that. So that's a part of actually across the Green Creek to the Rec Park. The only part, the extension on that is 18. So that's out to Onwood Drive. Then the green south from the Barcombe Tourist Park to Onwood Drive.
Alpha.
And Alpha, I would suggest would be the one up to the showgrounds.
15. CMR aren't going to accept responsibility for that one.
It's got
Really? Process of our one.
if you cross TMR actions.
Yeah.
So that's the only one that responsibility for all the others.
Can we ask that they reconsider that? Because that crosses a rail line, so you've got a considerable heightened risk factor, I would suggest, and possibly more expensive construction methodology. Has anything to do with Queensland Rail cost you $15,000 before you start. But part of our consultation, perhaps requesting that they because 14's already built from that, and so it's 21 and 22 and 24, or only part of 24. Small Street. Anyway, and that leaves, well, that's it, that's the three counts. Plus, the other thing, yeah, I suppose 18 in Bark Hall design, DMR asset, and 11 in Aramac. Or both of them to a somewhat simple construction program compared to 15. Bit an expensive problem. Is there any feedback as to why it finished at the front gate there of the showgrounds? Is there a methodology behind that rather than finishing at Yards Road?
It's 200 metres from set. You got to be from a school, a shop. So it's a critical service. Got to be within a certain number of metres.
Showground is considered a sporting facility. One of those that you've got to be within 2
So there are rules, aren't they?
That's a problematic intersection there. Like you cross the railway line and then you've got that horrible looking intersection immediately on the northern side of the railway line, east back into the industrial, the President Rail Estate, and then you've got the left hand turn or the westerly turn to Clement Alpha Road. It's a yuck place.
Similar problem.
Yeah.
Trying to get a pathway between all
Mm.
traffic movements.
We're across Lagoon Creek there, we mentioned before, that an issue.
Yeah, it is, but they've accepted full responsibility for that one, so we can let them worry about that.
I believe they're separate history.
Breeds. This funding.
It's 50-50 funding.
That's
Except for Lagoon Creek.
the rail cost.
Yeah, this is what worries me. Sorry, Councillor Blunt.
The rail crossing. You won't go there.
I still didn't hear what you said, sorry.
They should have the rail crossing instead of.
They should move the rail crossing. Let's not get started on what I think it means.
Crossing.
I'm in enough trouble with it. So that would be my immediate feedback, is just from a technical point of view, cost to construct that. Feedback to them would be if we could look at that. It's not just a simple straight ahead goal. Any other feedback?
Mr Mayor, can I just ask, could we also have some sort of rough estimates of what our 50% is going to be on all of these, please?
So that'll be in our budget works. If we've got a, once this is signed off on, then we've got a budget to meet their budget time frame as well.
But if we're going to allocate these at our December, or these at our December meeting,
Yeah,
I'd
sure.
like to know what our cost is before I endorse it, please.
Mr Mayor, we endorse the plan. We don't actually, the applications are separate.
So the first step of endorsing is that yes, we agree that that's the network, and then a subsequent decision of council is to apply for funding. Different. So today's the consultation. The next step is, yep, we agree that's a good plan, and then the third step, now we're going to apply for your funding.
We cost
match your
cost
plan.
and decide if we want to spend that 50.
Correct. Which would be we do our budget first, allocate the money in the budget, and then apply. Because if we haven't got the money in the budget, we can't apply without amending the budget anyway.
Apply.
Wouldn't it be better to do it the other way around? Allocate the money in the budget?
Timing won't. So the applications have to go in.
Yeah, but we'll have started out.
Oh, yeah, so
First round of capital works is
it will be
in
a
3
great
weeks.
budget workshop. But we won't know we'll get the funding until.
By which time we will have painted our budget down, allocating that sum of money. All right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just the graphics don't necessarily, they don't. Unless they're colourblind. The legend says that a dark blue is existing, whereas none of the maps show any existing. It just might be some benefit to show what we do have there.
That existed prior to this network plan. We didn't have any. So, so what they've got there is priority A. I should let you speak to this, but back in that, before this principal cycle network plan started, the priority, we didn't have any priority bot network existing as reported. So when we started from scratch. So the green are some that have already been completed through this, I think. Is that right?
That's right. We, at the start of this process, we didn't have footpaths.
Yeah.
They regarded.
But we do currently have some.
Yeah.
These ones, so they're not updating them to reflect.
So are they
existing
our graphics
year
or
on
somebody else's? Are they our graphics or somebody else's?
TMRs.
Oh, okay.
What they're not doing, so that they haven't upgraded they just extend the legend on the basis of A to D. They're not, once something's constructed, flicking it to blue.
Can we give them that feedback to maybe do that? Then? It just shows, it's a visual cue that we have it here and here, that's what we're trying to build.
That's what I was just trying to guesstimate there before, whether we've done that one down as far as Mall Street and Alpha, and I don't think we have, but there's certainly large sections of the green there that are completed, so it's good feedback again. Change the mapping to reflect completion.
Or whether it's dotted, the colour can stay the same if they want to keep it at that category, but
Already
put a dotted
constructed.
or dash it or hash it, just so that we know that that's completed, so that.
To you, Mr. Mayor, did you want us to say which ones have been completed?
Happy for today. Well,
With that?
yeah, well, if you'd like to. I think we've sort of just guesstimated them here before, but if you want to be clear with them all. Aramak, start there.
The Quarter Street one, Waddleton Gordon, and Walker Street, no, it's on there, the Lodge, Lodge to Quarter, I don't think it's on there, is it? I didn't see that one. One that goes from Quarter up to McCall is completed.
Yep.
And we're doing the Gordon Street to Kerr Street, that section of Quarter Street at the moment.
That's the most northerly bit. No,
No.
just this bit.
From the Main Street, Gordon Street up to Kerr Street section that's will be done shortly.
A dedicated bit. Right, bit.
On which street, Paul?
When you leave the meetings for Councillor Peoples.
Sorry?
From Gordon Street to Kerr Street.
Just stay here. Sit down. Right. Mark Alden.
So in Barcaldine, the streets that are done are from the cemetery to the end of Oak Street, all the way down past the school, which then links to Gidgee Street, which goes to the Box Street, which leads onto Box Street. The next section of that was to be done was Acacia Street, which appears to have been taken off. So the only section that really is left is that very small portion from Bohemia Street to Ironwood Drive.
So that's labelled on our maps as 18,
That's correct.
and the section labelled as 16 from the service station to the rec park. Is that correct?
There actually is a pathway on that side of southern side of Oak Street, so that pathway does probably link across to there. So really it's probably from
Lagoon Creek.
Lagoon Creek, just over the bridge.
I would say because the cycle path, it's not wide enough to cycle.
So they might,
They may want it wider. Only a metre wide.
Yeah.
Concrete.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the wider pathway that runs down from the showgrounds out to the cemetery is part of this? Or no, because it's not identified on there, on the map.
No, that was a different funding.
District Communities Program, wasn't it? Or no, the state version of that.
So this doesn't go out to the cemetery. So that path. Under that program. What we've done is the whole of Gidgee Street.
Mr. Mayor, that maps, yeah, I think I've worked out only by the legend down below.
Yeah, but by that map, that feeds to in front of the school and ends at the airport, in the corner there.
And I apologise, I did include the cemetery because it actually does link. So it does flow through.
So Pine Street and Gidgee Street. But the only bit that 9 is. I think 9 is that's down past the hospital down to Miles Street.
Corner of Miles
Is
Street.
that right? We're looking at that, so there's no path there, so that is another one that. That is fine.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, that was the one that isn't mentioned in their legend. So that's what I was relating everything to.
So we'll, when we have, so they've promised us we'll have one-on-one feedback over the next couple of weeks, so when we do that, we'll identify those issues, if they can make those maps clearer about which are completed, which.
Or even possibly the identification of other footpaths, that, even though they're not funded by this mechanism, like if we can show that we have other bike paths or whatever. If we have an asset that fits that definition, but it's not funded by that. From a planning point of view, it may be beneficial to see that, yes, we have this here, and if it fits their rules, then we can link up to it.
Are there any more questions?
Mr. Mayor, in Alpha, we've gone from Dryden Street, and it goes past into Tennyson Street, into Shakespeare Street, and then it links back to where the highway is, there down at the businesses where they are in Shakespeare Street. We've also then completed for Shakespeare on Moore Street, back to Dryden Street, back to the to where the highway is there.
So is it only 15 that we have done? No.
Yeah. 15. I'm not sure about the one that's where that green goes there from the 14 to the 13. I'm not sure where that was. That must have been just in the actual initial route. I'm pretty sure that's Scott Street.
Is that around the school?
Yeah, they're only going down past it. No, there's no footpaths down there, cycle paths. They've also, then in Dryden Street there too, we've also got where the actual cycle path is. It's actually been painted on the bitumen there as well. That was the
So
other
that
option.
is very matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be a concrete path, it can be a painted path on has to be clearly identified as a cycle.
Which they've been painted just recently in the last few months. Painted section there that will draw straight from the wall.
So, through that, it can transition from a concrete footpath, whatever they are, a metre and a half wide onto bitumen, and it's still continued on that as a continuous.
Yes. But they don't, the whole aim of this is to separate bikes from traffic, so preference is.
There's cycle paths to 2.5 metres. Cool.
Yes, I can't try to get that, which has to be 2.5.
It does take up a fair bit of footpath.
Any more discussion about that? We're going to move in a second. Okay. There's someone who wants to move that we receive the action. Councillor Hands. A second. All those in favour?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillors, do I have your permission just to give you a COVID update before we continue with the agenda? So the Premier released this morning, do you want to formally suspend standing orders or you just want to proceed to brief? Sorry? So there'll be further details of this afternoon, but the plan from 80% vaccination status on has been released. Vulnerable settings, aged care, hospital, prisons and disability services will no longer accept unvaccinated visitors. Unvaccinated people can visit for the purposes of end-of-life, childbirth or emergency situations. If you're an unvaccinated person, once Queensland hit 80%, unless it's for one of those reasons, you'll no longer be able to visit aged care or hospitals. Hospitality venues, hotels, pubs, clubs, taverns, bars, restaurants and cafes will no longer accept unvaccinated patronage. As of when we hit 80%, which is estimated, possibly has already been announced as today, but it'll be within days if it's not today. Only vaccinated staff and patrons can enter with no COVID-19 density limits, so returning to pre-COVID. If there is a private hire of the venue with unvaccinated individuals, it will be a maximum of 20 people or one per 4 square metres. So a maximum of 20, doesn't matter how big the building is, or 1 per 4 if that lowers the threshold to lower than 20. Indoor entertainment venues, nightclubs, indoor live music venues, karaoke bars, concerts, theatres and cinemas only will accept vaccinated pubs. And no COVID-19 density limits apply. Outdoor entertainment activities, example sports stadiums and theme parks. And I still can't, why I stepped away from the chair was to clarify whether that included showgrounds will only accept vaccinated patronage. No COVID-19 density limits apply. 100% attendees must be vaccinated. Festivals, whether the venue is indoor or outdoor, folk festivals, art festivals, music festivals, only vaccinated staff and patrons permitted to enter, including performance crew, catering and food trucks. 100% vaccination. Weddings, are vaccinated and unvaccinated allowed to attend. However, if any person is unvaccinated, then the entire wedding, including the wedding party and officials, cannot exceed 20, irrespective of the size of the venue. It's a wonder where our phones haven't been going off the hook here with people screaming about civil liberties. But anyway, Queensland government-owned galleries, museums and libraries, no unvaccinated patronage, no COVID-19 density limits. Other settings, such as essential retail, other retail, public transport, etc., will accept both vaccinated and unvaccinated people. However, COVID-19 density restrictions may still apply as per Queensland's current COVID Safe Future Roadmap. Massive change, massive, probably the biggest change we've had in over 12 months. We probably knew it was coming, but it's a proper, that's a massive change for Queenslanders to know now. It's changed both positive and negative, but if you are unvaccinated, you can no longer go to a pub, you can no longer go to a restaurant, you can no longer go to a hotel, a tavern, a nightclub, a sports stadium, a theme park, a wedding without limiting the size of the wedding. So you can go to the wedding, but if you're unvaccinated, you will lower the threshold for attendees at the wedding to 20. You can no longer visit a government-owned gallery, museum or library. And you can no longer visit anybody in hospital or aged care. Now, without even having received that briefing, I can tell you why that is what it is because they now know that COVID's coming. 80%, the Premier will be intending to open the borders, both domestically and internationally, and there needs to be the only places where people gather or where people that are at risk or exposed is people where there are vaccinations. The government will be deeming that the risk here of allowing unvaccinated people into those spaces is too high to limit the spread. This will come at a major compliance issue, and I'm imagining you'll be briefed on who's going to be responsible for ensuring compliance of this afternoon, but I'm already, like the CEO, shaking my head and wondering how on earth they're going. But that's what the current state of play is, and that is an official document. That's not a background document that I was just reading. Yep, that was released at 10 o'clock today, public.
Mr. Mayor, can I go back to one of your earlier points there in that brief? Did it say that if you're unvaccinated, you can't go to hospital?
You can't visit a hospital. You can attend for personal treatment, but if, say, you want to visit somebody who's in hospital, the only purpose that you can visit is for the end-of-life purpose, for childbirth, so I'm assuming, or an emergency situation, taking somebody in the district. Can't even go and visit. This is for one of those three purposes.
Did you say events? So would that be things as like events that we have as well, like
I have to
wouldn't
get
be the
clarity.
stadiums, but campgrass, rodeos?
Doesn't clarify that, and I couldn't get clarity in the time I had there, but I will get it shortly. But yeah, my estimate to that would be yes, but we're not live, so don't take that for gospel. But yes, it's a outdoor entertainment activity. I think, and it's on us now, like it's imminent. If it could be already in place, they were expecting to reach 80% today of the state. So if once they get to that,
Mr. Mayor, what?
80% double dose, as opposed to 80%. So the heading on that is confusing. So actually, that's not for another month yet. Sorry, it's the 17th of September. So we've got a month to get that in place, which is actually a little more than a month. You can get 2 Pfizer shots in the time between now and when that kicks in. So that's giving people still time.
You prove of your double vaccination.
Yep. You can download it.
Through my Gov Act.
That's one way of doing
Your
it. Yeah.
Medicare come to it.
And the card they give you is no good.
And the card you get to health centres, the months throughout the bid when you walk out. That's the only one that matters, or the official letter that you get emailed or you can download.
Do you think that maybe in one of our newsletters we tell people how they can get that on their phone so as everyone understands how they can carry that around.
We'll probably have a whole suite of education to do in November edition, I would imagine, as a result of today's announcement.
And Mr Mayor, reinforcing the use of that check-in app, because the Territory having some issues at the moment where someone's attended a Melbourne Cup Day function and there was 300 odd patrons there and only 40 people checked in, so NT have extended their lockdown or shut out or whatever the term they use, because they just don't know who's there.
I've often wondered how that works. You see people walking in without checking in, but there's no real checkup on it or check out. Does it really?
I think we are closer to having it here than we ever were.
It's clearly indicating that by saying she doesn't even want you to go to the pub, unless you've had 2 shots. All right, that I thought it was extremely pertinent that you be in receipt of that information. You have got 6 weeks to digest it, and there'll be more detailed. I'll email you my one-pager that I have, but there'll be a more detailed background to that after my meeting today. That it usually doesn't cover much more than this, except to clarify. Yes, it probably does include rodeos, campgrounds, football games here in the bush, just as much as it does in the big centres. There's no threshold there. 339, have councillors with PCO, aye, and yours name. That's what we've decided. Somebody move we received the report. Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Gleeson. Those in favour? 6-0. Correct.
Mr Mayor, at the last meeting, Council carried a resolution, see there, pertinent point for this report is item C, which the council directs the chief executive officer to provide a report to the next general meeting of council, outlining the additional resources required to immediately improve the most critical safety concerns areas. I suppose the most immediate concern is road safety. So after that meeting, I instructed the acting senior supervisor and Armac to ensure that temporary safety warning signs were placed on the Armac Jericho Road and the Bowen Downs Road. We've also, the Director of Works has organised for permanent signs to be ordered for all our major road networks, basically saying drive to prevailing road conditions. Now we do have some of those on our roads. I also requested the project manager at GBA to assess the Aramac Jericho Road. He travelled out there, I think it was the next day. Assessment. Got the responses there in your report. Major factor there is corrugation. Also spoke to the flood damage contractor. Spoke to him a number of times just to ensure what the time period was to get that road completed. He said that he'd be there this week and have the job completed by the 17th of December. Yesterday I spoke to him again. he assured me that he would be moving equipment week onto that road. So that'll be his focus for next month. Also, the senior work supervisor phone property owners in that area. Keep them updated. We did also, I did check as well that the Munnabara Ewan Road, that job completed satisfactorily, which it had been, although with the rain, truck had driven on it immediately after the rain. And, so there's already damage to the road. All that work. So that's, I suppose, just an interim report on what's happened. There are structural issues that need to be resolved in that area. Works to how we're going to resolve those issues. It's difficult with senior work supervisor has been away for an extended period. It is difficult to work out a solution without him being there.
Question? Councillor please.
Through Mr. Mayor, might be a bit rude in asking, but why did you immediately go to an engineer to drive the road instead of a web supervisor or a web supervisor?
I think Mr. Mayor wanted an independent person to drive the road. Because I've got conflicting information. Our staff have different opinions that he burdened the road, have been independent. Also, he is managing the flood damage on the road.
There was a clear attempt to need to identify where the flood damage sections were in respect to the other additional work that may be required, because they were the ones in receipt, like they were the manager of that flood damage package.
And also, Mr. Mayor, in relation to the discussion we had earlier, I had spoken to that to establish what those gaps were and how much it'll cost, and as you can see in that report, about $20,000 extra to do the maintenance in those issues. So I've instructed him to proceed with that.
I just want to pick up on the permanent safety warning signs. I mean, they don't alleviate the need to maintain the roads, but it's going to indicate the vector that keeps hanging over us. TMR now for a number of years have installed on their roads, gravel roads, the need to drive to prevailing road conditions, because they can't change. As fast as we fix a road, someone goes and moves 40 decks of cattle and it's completely, can be fine today and absolutely destroyed tomorrow, depending on the year. So there's always a timeliness, as well as weather events will cause impacts to them that aren't flood damage but fire. So I think the installation of appropriate warning is not panic or all cure for the road surface not being to a standard we all like. It doesn't alleviate our need to do it, but it does attempt to address the concerns that have been raised in Gundawin Debate about inappropriate installation of road signage, because a temporary sign fell over in the water and someone fell into a pothole, got hurt, summarised version. We've got permanently installed road signs, as TMR do on their dirt roads, indicating problems with prevailing. It fills a gap in our liability exposure currently exists Is it possible to have one on every road? That's a very cost prohibitive thing, but at least if they're somewhere once they leave our sealed road network, then they can't not get onto the other roads without going past them. So I'm sure the locations will be negotiated by others, but so long as once you leave the TMR or council sealed network and enter the unsealed network, you may take a number of different roads to reach your endpoint, but you will have driven past one of these signs. As I say, in no means a step towards fixing the road surface, but one of the issues that I did raise for addressing is the concern about not signing dangerous section or road conditions that may alter rapidly what exposure to risk, liability risk that is for council. So that's a permanent. We didn't necessarily flag until the December meeting, but that's a step to address that relatively promptly. Sorry, to address that promptly on fleet relatively then. I guess my only comment, and I know this report's been put together in a relatively short period of time given the 9 minutes of the month. I note further in the Director of Works report as well, Reedy Creek Road mentioned, so there's a number of other roads there that probably need some attention, but that obviously or further inspection, but we've addressed them. There are 2 reports here, 3 that I certainly raised last meeting, and once we get them rolled, it's a matter of making sure that holistically, structurally, as you refer to, I guess, Brett, that all of these roads are captured, not just necessarily the ones that have got correspondence to the volume.
Yeah, that's probably my bit of an issue with the response is that, the Ilfracombe Road and the Stagmount Road and the gravel along the Stagmount Road sat there for 13, 16 months or whatever. There should have been more said about what we're going to do there. What are we going to do to fix those roads?
That is mentioned in the Director of Works report, isn't it?
It's in the Director report. Well, you've asked the CEO for a report on that.
I think point taken. I think Stagmount Road flood damage, from my point, it's going to answer the question when we get to the Director of Work. What are we doing to replace the gravel that's washed away? Are we issue new contracts there, or are we trying to make do with what's left? Or
Stagmount Road is Aramac flood damage. Aramac crew is doing flood damage there. Flood's control.
so on that? What I'm doing with the flood, with the gravel that's washed away?
The officer of Wake has come back and need to discussion with them. Then there needs more material needs.
The Ilfracombe Road?
It's the road that goes to Longridge. Okay. I went for a drive down Ilfracombe Road from Longridge. Make sure that that road, some of that road is bitumen, which is not ours, I don't think, but most of our area, the dirt road, that was pretty good, I could get onto it, but the actual floodways, they need attention. Do need attention. I think there would have been about 4 or 5 that I was driven. I was only doing 80 k's an hour. So that's another thing that I need to have a chat. But yeah, the actual road is a TMR road, and yeah, can be done under RMPC, but we have TMR, I believe.
I drove the Aramac Road. It's fine. But the gravel at the Aramac end was perfect.
That goes for about 5k, that gravel.
And running surface of the black soil was 100k. No, in the Longridge Shire, they are reforming the road, so it was actually quite more dangerous than our section. It was very slippery. I didn't see major problems. Probably different now that it's rained.
No, it's been like, I don't think that road's been up to standard for some time, Brett. I don't understand how you blokes drive that road and say it's in good order.
Through you, Mayor, I'm not saying it's in good order, but black dirt, when I drive on black dirt, it sucks the tyres in and you can do quite speed. The issue is over there, you've got dirt and then you've got gravel in sections, and where that changes, that can be an issue. And most of those areas are in the floodway, and some of them have gouges out of it. And I understand it needs fixing. So yeah, but the section of black soil, we can put gravel on it, but it's got to be through GMR instructions.
We can't resheet black soil with gravel without their approval.
Yeah.
It's not even RNPC, it'll be a special allocation.
It needs to be graded and formed again. Yeah, that's what it needs. I'm not saying we have to put gravel on it, but it needs to be.
Yeah. Through you, Mayor.
Yep.
The thing that I actually picked up and was in relation to the signs. Now, I'm not sure how if there's permanent signs. When I drove from the other end, there was a big sign, red sign, I had to drive in prevailing conditions. But then when we got to the border sign, where our border starts, there was nothing. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, where one side's got a sign up and then.
We wouldn't need it going the same way. Do we have one at the Aramac end going back though?
And
You wouldn't want one at the middle. We've already just driven past the Ilfracombe one, but you need one at the end.
because it's our boundary, that's the technical thing that I'm worried about. It's our boundary, people going away from one council into another. That council's got theirs placarded, come through and drive through on the boundary, and all of a sudden.
Longridge wouldn't have one if you were heading, so you were heading from Ilfracombe, from the Longridge Shire into the Barcaldine. If you leave the Barcaldine Shire and heading to Longridge, they don't have one either.
No, I don't think so, I don't.
The point would be if we don't have one at Aramac heading back, then that's the drama, not so much whether there's one at the boundary. There should be one at each end of the road, definitely. That's TMR should pay
It is a
that.
10, yeah.
It's their sign.
That's right.
But it's our problem. Under Gundawindi Tate, something goes wrong. We're the road managers from here. We're the road manager from here to Barcaldine, and Barcaldine to wherever the Longridge boundary is on that road. We're responsible. So there definitely needs to be signs installed on that road. Like if Longridge have got one up, and we've got them on the Alpha Timbo Road, we've got them on the Alpha Claremont Road. All of our gravel TMR assets have got them on it. There definitely should be one at Aramac. Has to be.
I'm just going to say, well, I'm disappointed that officers say that road's okay. That's, if that's the standard that we're going to say that our roads, that's what they're going to be. There's stones coming through that Ilfracombe Road about this big and coming up through the top of the formation. But to hear you blokes say that road's okay, that's a worry for me, because it's not okay.
Through you, Mayor, I agree with your statement, I really do. At that time, when I was driving, it was rough, but I could drive through, and when I compared it to some of the roads that I've driven on further up north, and back quite around the roads, but they're probably a little bit harder on the wheels, but they were really, really rough. In some of the sections where I drove on Ilfracombe Road, it just seemed like it sucked me in and it was fine. But there are divots and there isn't. It can use a grade. I totally agree. And I'll go back and I'll have a chat to TMR to see if it's a specific requirement or can we do it under the RMPC. So, and I don't even, I wouldn't be even able to tell you when it was graded last. Wouldn't be able to.
May I just say, like, I'm not an engineer, so you don't know what the requirements are on that road. But all I'm saying is I drove it, not comfortable driving it. You may not be up to my standards. I don't know that. You're an engineer.
Mr Mayor, we speak out of church, but most of the problems is the grader drivers grade the top off the road and send it all out. You only got to drive along the roads, and you've got gravel over down the water drains. You've got gravel out on the outskirts. Roads just get deeper and deeper and deeper, and all the material that's been cut in over the years just gets graded away. It's a damn shame when you drive around and see the amount of work that's been done over the years, and then just keep getting carted away every time the machine goes on. That gets back to operators and supervisors.
So I think we can wait now to see what needs to be done on a more structured annual basis for next meeting to ensure that we don't go back to revisiting this in 12 months and having the same problem. We need to look for more permanent annual improvement, notwithstanding obviously the weather impacts. We'll discuss this again in a month's time. If somebody could please fetch councillor councillors, I've just thought of something that I didn't start at 3310. Would it be deemed a conflict of interest for a councillor to partake in the discussion of this matter if they are currently under investigation by the OIA? I'm going to declare a prescribed conflict of interest and will leave on the basis that the Office of the Independent Assessor has commenced an investigation into me for failing to display the high standards of leadership required by a member of a local government, and so therefore believe that any assistance that council may provide, my participation in this could provide conflict to any future assistance. Nick?
Mr Mayor, that would then apply to anyone that has an open investigation, and I declare the same conflict then.
I'm not aware of any on me.
So, anyone like to ask any questions or any discussion about this recommendation?
Yes, Miss.
Deputy, do you know who any of us
Sorry, Beck. Sorry,
Just
Councillor
ask
Plum.
Just asking the deputy, does he know of any of us that have got any outstanding?
Deputy Mayor, I'm not aware of any, but that doesn't mean there isn't. So, I'm not aware of any current investigation.
Madam Deputy Mayor, can I just ask, what are we talking about providing assistance? What's that? What have we got to do?
Madam Deputy Mayor, the state government's commenced an inquiry into the independent assessor.
Yep.
As you can see by the report there. What the Mayor discussed was that any councillor wanted to make a submission to the inquiry, that we would provide admin assistance. And, if you need someone to type up your submission, that for you. Obviously, we can't submit on your behalf, but we just need admin assistance. Got to do that for you. The other thing is that it's not in that resolution, but if council as a whole wanted to put submission in, like that.
So what does everyone think about whole of council submission? Anyone got any idea? Any ideas?
For you, Madam, you're saying local regional council or councillors or whole of council? So what you're saying, right? What you're meaning?
So
Just a
council-
different word.
Council can submit under the name of Barclay Regional Council for a submission. Do a combined submission if wanted, or each individual council of their own.
Madam Deputy Mayor, could we possibly just change the resolution to say to provide assistance to Barclay Regional Council / councillor with any submission that may be sent to the inquiry? So that just leaves it open for both. As a council, we can do one if we want, or any councillor can do one if they want.
Anyone else have any objections to what some people have suggested? I think that's it.
I doubt council will do one, but if we just put that in there, that's the options open.
Have I got a move for that new?
Can we just might change that? So can we put council authorises the acting chief to make a submission inquiry or to provide provide assistance to a councillor.
Not the council.
And the lead to after executive officer is deleted to provide assistance. Council authorises the acting chief to make a submission to the inquiry or to provide assistance to the council with the inquiry.
That's saying that the chief executive officer make a submission to the inquiry on council.
Right, sorry, I misunderstood.
Well, all I'm saying, Brett, is that we leave the assistance there if the whole of council want to do one,
Right, I understand.
or the councillor singularly wants to do one. Is all I'm saying.
So council peoples, it would just, the change would be provide assistance to at Barcaldine to Barcaldine Regional Council, then just / council with a submission to the inquiry.
That's what we had originally.
Yep.
So now what do you want to change to,
Slash
sorry?
councillor.
So back to where we had it before.
Any more discussion on that? That change in the motion? Do I have a mover for that motion? Moves and you second that? Is there anyone, any discussion or does anyone want to speak for the motion?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, just on a discussion point to the CEO. In your opinion, should we put one in as a council?
Depends what, I can collate what your thoughts are. Council has opinions about the process. I think it definitely, if we're going to make a submission, it would be about timeliness of decision. Something gets recorded, it's got to be a set timetable of, within 20 days, and decision will be made within X number of days, so that everyone's very clear about what the process is. And not have this just dragging on forever. And,
I agree.
There are areas there that we could try and speed up so as,
So I, maybe we just have to have, if we're going to proceed with submission, we one of our sessions, which I don't know. The next one, if there'll be one before the first, then we just have a separate session where we just make some points about what are the issues of a draft submission based on.
Shortness of the time frame.
Also through you, Deputy Mayor, I've had one of them done on me, and my personal opinion is if the name is not attached to the complaint, complaint shouldn't be even looked at. People can complain about any one of us and they're not putting their name to that complaint. I don't think the ordinance says you should look at that. That's, anonymous names. It can be anyone that just has a total dislike to me, chuck them in. I want to chuck 200 in, all of a sudden one will stick. They're not going to put their name to that complaint. I don't think that complaint should be allowed.
So anonymous complaints should be on the list, on the submission.
anyway, we probably get this motion out of the road, and then if we want to do something about putting a submission as a council, that's where we talk about all these areas.
So you want to put that motion to the vote? So, what is it? 6.
Five.
Five.
Did you get all the
Motion's carried. Someone want to go? Yeah. Do you want to, we'll break the lunch.
Good on you, man. Deputy Mayor. Good on you.
I just countermand that order, we're not breaking the lunch at all. So Ahmad's come all the way over, so we're going to do the finance report before lunch. Right. Can I have somebody please move that we receive the financial report, agenda item 341, thank you. Peoples, seconded Councillor Plum, those in favour? Carried. Okay, I note the slight Adjustment from the last meeting on the bottom of page 133 there. So I made a couple of notes about what's owing. Just, sorry, councillors, we've got to bring up, don't forget that page 136 of your agenda was substituted. Won't have been substituted in my hard copy, that did you.
So, Mr. Mayor, you say you sent us an email on that, didn't you?
Yeah, we did yesterday.
Yes, it didn't get updated in Big Tin Can, but it did with the public agenda and the annuals.
Right, might be right, okay.
The only change was the yellow bar
It's just a graph
on the
that's
graph.
come in. For cash and payments that we wasn't picking up the cash balance for this year. Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Questions? Or Simon, have you got anything you'd like to point out, first of all?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing was that statement of cash flow which we have adjusted to accurate numbers. Try to do a bit of commentary on the variances.
Questions around the room? On what the rates comparisons probably. So the total arrears balance for rates is reduced by approximately 43,000 month on month from the arrears balance, so there's been some recovery there. And the total outstanding from the new rates has gone down by 2.1 million, so we've only 311,000 outstanding from current year rates. That meant most paid within the discount period, obviously. There's 110 assessments, so there's been a reduction of 17 assessments outstanding for the year. There's still good movement there. The 2 and 1 year categories almost negligible. Other than that,
Hopefully. That process, the 6 months should be up. Also, or remove some more of those numbers.
so not showing in that same ad because it wasn't a figure in your notes. Not showing here is the flood damage for the 18-19 that we've spent but not yet claimed. Is that right? Is there an estimate to that or?
For the section.
So, well, with flood damage, is there any flood damage works that we've done and not yet claimed as revenue? So we've got, no, on at 18, 19, we spent more than our initial deposit. If we claimed any of that next gap,
Not yet, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
They're still in the process of putting submissions.
right?
We haven't yet claimed because I'm not sure.
Okay, so just pointing that out, councillors, as I did last meeting, we're going to continue to carry a significant liability there until we point cash liability until we can claim that. The use of liability is probably not technically correct there. It's actually the opposite. It's an owing, but we'll be in deficit from now on until we start to claim on individual jobs because we've spent the money we've been paid for that event. So we're $1 million in front already. We're $1 million behind, I should say. We're owed $1 million worth of money that we've spent. Okay. Any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so that's in addition to there's 4 million of recoverable works there. Take that we haven't claimed that either. Page 133, the bottom.
So we've spoke to claimed 1.8 million plus another $3 million. It's gone in. So it has been submitted to Main Road. So that's yes. So that's revenue that we'll see the next month.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, how regularly do we make like our RNPC claim or our project claims? Are we monthly, 2 monthly, stage-wise? I can understand for projects that it might be a completion of a certain stage, but in general, I don't need a lot of level of detail.
Ad hoc. That's right. Yeah. At milestone stages of the project, but we definitely, it's an area we need to work.
Thank you.
Further questions? Okay. From that, we'll stay for the project progress report, but we will break for lunch. Give you a minute. Sarmate, is that okay?
That's me.
Okay. We will adjourn. Lunch is in house.